Good morning. Welcome to this edition of the Lynn Hayes Freeland Show. I got to tell you, I'm kind of getting used to these Zoom shows. We are still practicing social distancing, but that doesn't mean the issues are going away. So, this is primary season. We're going to do a whole show around mail-in ballots for sure. In fact, we're going to do that very, very soon. But right now, the issue is the race for Congress. It's been a while since we've seen a real race for Congress. And this year, Congressman Mike Doyle, in fact, has a challenger. That challenger is Jerry Dickinson. He joins us this morning on the Lynn Hayes Freeland Show. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So curious, what has prompted you to want to run for Congress?
Sure. There's a number of things, but one is, look, the Trump administration, 2016, Trump coming to the office, our democratic institutions completely being destroyed by President Trump. And so that was a huge concern for me. But then also on the ground level here, I'm a father of a 2.5-year-old daughter and another daughter on the way in August. So for me, parenthood and fatherhood has made me think forward in terms of what this region is going to look like for our children. My daughter's growing up in Pittsburgh, and 2 daughters will be growing up in Pittsburgh as Black girls. And given the disparities that we see and the issues that are going on in this region regarding pollution and lack of access to healthcare, I do feel a responsibility to take my skill sets and my skill sets as a lawyer and as a law professor in trying to make some change here in the 18th Congressional District.
So what do you think the issues are in this district? I mean, certainly these are interesting times, 2020. And even when I mentioned, mail-in ballots, right now, there is not a consensus in the Black community on mail-in ballots. In fact, there are a lot of things that there's not a consensus within the Black community. What do you think the primary issues are?
So So when I started this campaign about over 12 months ago, I've been on the campaign for that long, we set out to get into every single municipality and borough throughout the entire district. There are 55 municipalities in the 18th Congressional District, includes all the city of Pittsburgh and the outlying Mon Valley area. So from Bridgeville to Glassport to Monroeville to city of Pittsburgh, Homewood, Hill District, everywhere. I was in every single neighborhood and municipality knocking doors, meeting thousands of voters, knocking on thousands of doors, hearing thousands of stories. And what we heard over and over and over again was people are extremely concerned about healthcare and getting access to adequate healthcare, and so they don't have to be going to the hospital and having a huge bill to pay, right? Or concerned about whether they're going to have pre-existing conditions covered, right? I mean, this is over and over and over again, hearing this concern about healthcare reform. And then we also hear about climate change, and largely it's regards to pollution. People are really concerned about what's happening in this region and how it's actually impacting them, their respiratory diseases that are being caused by pollution, asthma. Our air quality is not very good in this region, polluted water. So people are really concerned about those things. And then I'm also seeing other kind of major issues, criminal justice reform and affordable housing. People are concerned about having access to housing and not being gentrified and displaced out of this region. And this is happening in the African American community where, in the Hill District and Homewood and other places, families are being torn apart. They're being pushed out of their neighborhoods as we have new development into the city of Pittsburgh and the region. That's a huge concern. And so a lot of issues here on the ground level. And the question becomes, do we have a representative who is tackling and addressing those issues head on, right, as a primary issue? And that's where I come into play here, is that we can actually aspire for greatness for this district. We can actually push the envelope and raise the bar, raise the level of advocacy for folks in this district.
Now, see, and that's all very interesting, because you say when you started this campaign 12 months ago, now here we are in the middle of a crisis. We're in the middle of a pandemic. And a lot of those issues now are, I don't want to say coming back to haunt us, but when we talk about healthcare, we're still talking about a Black community that is clamoring to get tested. We're talking about a Black community that is still disproportionately being affected. We're talking about housing, and the realities are that when we talk about where and how we as a community live, there's certainly a reason why we are disproportionately being affected. because we can't self-distance a lot of times.
Right.
So how do we even begin to work our way through some of these issues that you identified 12 months ago?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the COVID-19 has exacerbated all of these issues along race and socioeconomic lines. And we're seeing it here in Pittsburgh and across the United States. African Americans are being infected by the disease much more than the virus, much more than white counterparts. The rate of death is higher as well. And now we're seeing in places like Clairton, right, where you have the Clairton Coke Works and the pollution that's being caused in that neighborhood, in that municipality, and largely predominantly African American. And so now you have people who are living in Clairton, they have respiratory diseases, and as a result of COVID-19, they're now more likely to be infected and actually die because they already have that pre-existing condition of asthma. And so you can see the COVID-19 issue just bearing down on African American communities in ways that I think is going to have long-lasting effects. And so the question becomes, what are we doing to address this? Do we have leaders in Congress and just representatives across the board who are identifying that issue and saying we need to do something about it now? I recently released an African American platform, a policy paper on how we're going to address these major issues, disparities across the region, and we can be big and bold and use this congressional seat as a bully pulpit to address these major issues, which is an extraordinary opportunity that we have.
This is an interesting congressional seat because Mike Doyle has been there for a long time. We're going to talk about that and a lot more in just a minute when the Lynn Hayes Freeland Show continues. We'll be right back.